welcome, welcome. My name is Trisha, owner of Creative Costume Academy. I am here today with a good friend of mine, Mela. And if you love pattern making, if you love hearing about pattern making, please hit that like button so that you tell YouTube that you like hearing about this kind of thing. So it'll push it out to more pattern nerd, pattern lovers like yourself. Hi, Victoria. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Karen. Welcome, everyone. Please know that this is a conversation. This is not just us talking to you. We love to hear from you. We love to answer your questions and all of that. Today, we're kicking a new series that I want to try here on my channel. Talk. Oh, so weird. I can hear myself playing back. I might have to hold on. Can you still hear me, Mela?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do
I'm gonna
sound a
do
little
that.
bit underwater.
Yeah, that was weird because I started hearing myself in my headphones. Like what I was saying earlier, that was so strange. Hey, we've got Canada in the house, Colorado, UK. Thank you guys. They can hear me. Okay. So I'm going to, so sorry, I got distracted by my own voice in my head. Not in the fun way. But we're kicking off. Hi, Belgium. Belgium's in the house. And North Carolina, yes, close by neighbors. So we're kicking off a new series. You may have heard that I am working towards creating a pattern convention, all for pattern nerds like all of us here. We want to learn about pattern making. We want to do fun stuff. I've done a couple solo lives where I've asked you guys what you want at PatternCon. So what I want to start doing now is I'm going to start bringing on other pattern nerd lovers, pattern teachers that I know that are near and dear to my heart, and ask them what they think should be at PatternCon and give you guys an opportunity to mix and mingle with them as well and ask them questions. So I am starting with Mela Hoyt Hayden not only because she was the first person to really introduce and encourage me to learn pattern making and go down this road, but also, we lost her for a second.
I know. I don't know why. I'm here.
You just went black. Did you touch something on your phone? That's so weird. Hi from Florida. Hi from Massachusetts. So not only that, but she also is my friend. I'm here. We can hear you. We just can't see you.
Oh no.
Oh no. Maybe try going out and coming back in again.
Okay.
We'll see if that works.
How do I do that?
There should be a little X up in the top left-hand corner, maybe. And then click on the link again. Yeah, so she's gone, but hopefully she will come back. I was just going to have her introduce herself. So Mela, I'll talk a little bit more about her before she comes back on. So Mela was my first pattern making teacher, costume design professor, and we've stayed in touch over the years. She's always been an inspiration to me. And she is the first person to introduce historical pattern drafting to me. And she's an excellent milliner. She's also been involved with, there she is, she's back. She's also been involved with and was one of the original founding members for Costume College. So Mela knows a lot of things, and she is my right-hand person helping me to create this PatternCon convention for all of you. So that's why I thought it was perfect to bring Mela on for our first of this series. So Mela, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Well, you already sort of did a great introduction. I don't know what else to say, except this is kind of fun to get to do. And I love patterning. I always have loved patterning. I know I've gone back into millinery a lot, but my first love was patterning, but was historical patterning and using Janet Arnold and Jean Honeysett and then Haslam systems and all different types of systems. That's what I love, is finding something that is Victorian and trying to figure out how they use different tapes and different methods and the different type of slopers that were used. And that's what I find pretty exciting. It's pretty nerdy, but that's what I love. I love it when you can take, just numbers and lines, and you can create a pattern, and then all of a sudden you transfer it into fabric and you can wear it. I mean, how exciting could that be? I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
And I just love translating in a problem. That was always my favorite thing when students would bring in something and they go, "Well, what about this book?" And I go, "I don't know. I'm going to look this up and figure it out."
Yeah.
And then I bring it back next week and say, "Okay, you guys, here's how I think it works."
Yeah.
But it also takes a village. It's not just one person. It takes a village with everyone's input in, and that's what's so exciting.
Yeah.
And that village is not big enough. We need to make that village bigger.
Yeah, we need to expand and welcome in more pattern nerds and more
Yes.
people who are interested in it. So that's kind of our motivation for doing this pattern convention. Mela is also, for those of you who remember, or I know a few of you who are here, are joining us for our Fitabulous Fit weekend retreat. Mela will be the one who is with me at that retreat. She's going to be helping us do the fittings and the pattern corrections. I couldn't ask for anyone better. I learned it all from her. So,
Yeah, but she's gotten way beyond me sometimes. I mean,
but she's best. And they love your glasses, Mela. Natalie is up early because she's down in Australia. She said she just purchased two of Jean Honeyset books as they have been reprinted and they are great.
oh, that was my mentor for years. Jean was, and she actually stayed with me for a while. And yeah, really good friend. And we was sad when we lost her, but her books are fabulous. There are actually 5 books of hers out. I don't know if they reprinted all 5 of them or not, but there are five
Yeah.
books.
Yeah, and Natalie does a lot of costumes and some really beautiful, intricate work down in Australia. We've connected a
Ooh, I'll
lot.
have to look her up.
And Sue Cudworth, she's excited to she'll be at our weekend retreat, so we're excited about that. But I want you. So you were the first person I remember. I think the first historical draft that I did was the doublet for Taming of the Shrew.
Now that was yeah, that was out of probably, was that Jean Honeyset?
I don't remember because you printed off the
No,
pages for me, and I still
no.
have it actually.
You really do? Who
Mhm.
knows where that's from? That could have been from either Janet Arnold when she came out with her book on 16th century costuming or clothing. Could have probably was out of Janet Arnold, where those little tiny patterns, and then you have to scale
Oh,
them up, and then you have
scale
to
'em up.
scale them up for the sizes too.
This was the yeah, I like the Janet Arnold, and I was just looking because I've recently moved. I don't have all of my books here like I usually do because I have the one you gave me, a Janet Honeysett book when I left FJC, and then I collected I think two or three more since,
Mhm.
with the little. But no, this was a plug in the measurements and an actual draft. I remember.
That might have been I don't know. That might have been just one of those things that I created from Elsega. Elsega was a one of the earliest pattern drafters that we have record of from the 1600s, actually 15s, late 1500s.
Wow.
And I think I spent a lot of times figuring out plug-in for that and created those for the class. Boy, I don't know where those notes are, but I bet you I could pull them out. Well, if you have copies, I'd love copies back
Yeah,
because
I have it. I have it somewhere. I've kept everything. I have that, and I have the one for I think the Regency, not Regency, Bustle bodice.
yeah, the bustle bodice I've taught many, many times at costume
Yeah,
college, and those are
yeah.
based off of actual period slopers for the 1880s, but and you have to
Mhm.
use it on a corset. It doesn't work on a modern
Right,
bra.
right. Because
Um,
that's how
yeah,
it's built
so
to be.
that's why it's different. So if you tried it with a modern bra, it's not going to fit.
Yeah.
Um, and those are off of original pattern slopers from the time. But boy, the other one I think is based off of Alsega. I really do.
So cool. We would love to hear, like, if you guys have any questions about any of this stuff. We have a lot of people. Hi, Charlotta. Charlotta's here. She's my other pattern nerd friend I go live on YouTube with all the time, and I'll probably be bringing her into one of these.
Yay!
And we've got people from Texas and Michigan and Ireland. Hello, welcome everybody. If you guys I'm hyperventilating right now talking about this. Natalie says.
That's a true pattern nerd. Yes.
That's right, our people.
Yes, it is.
So, if you have any questions for Mila, obviously she's a wealth of knowledge about all of this stuff. But about historical drafts. One thing that I always loved when I was taking classes from you, Mila, was you just had all of these little bits of information about like where things came from or why like the modern silhouette and patterns are different from like historical, like I think you were the first one to tell me that about drafting systems in general, that we didn't always have measuring tapes and like
Mm,
plot with measurements. It was used like twill tapes.
mhm.
And you would have a set of tapes per person so that that would be that person's draft. Anything like that. Like I just love hearing those little tidbits like that you knew all those cool things.
I actually kind of bored you guys all the time. Sometimes people would go, "Oh, can we just do the project? Will she shut because I love all the little nerdy information because I think that when you understand those
Yeah,
things, then you understand the whole picture and you
right.
understand why one is different than the other. It's like the Haslam system. I don't know if anyone has dealt with like a Haslam system, and they're being
Is that similar
reprinted.
to Luderlo? Haslam is similar to Luderlo, right? No.
Yes, it is
Okay.
similar to Ludolo, but not completely because Ludolo does a like a tape that goes out, but
Yes.
Haslam does not.
Okay.
Haslam has a basic sloper that you make up, but
Okay.
they're different slopers for different time periods. So they had a sloper for the 20s, and then they revised their sloper for the 1930s clothes, and then they
Wow.
revised their sloper for the 1940s clothes. So if you use a
Okay.
1920s sloper, Haslam sloper, it won't work with a 1940s dress. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So they had different
Last
slopers. They also have their own ruler, their own weird ruler, which let me see. Yeah,
Okay.
which is this weird thing. And there's a reprint that is it Mrs. Dupree
This
online?
is true. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
she has it. So this is their weird ruler, and you can get it in a book from Mrs. Dupree, a copy of it,
yeah.
and you have to put it together, and
Yeah.
then and it's like, what the heck is this? And but once you start to use it, you go, oh, I get it. And there's two sides to it, so I don't do two sides. I do two rulers because it's easier.
Yeah. Right.
For me, just do two. And but once you get used to it, it's really cool. It really is cool, and it's very easy once you figure it out. But
So would
it's
you want to have one? I'm asking our folks that are here. Would you guys be interested in doing a class on like the Haslam system? Because Natalie's saying she's never heard of it before, but would that, although it would be a big trek for Natalie to come to our PatternCon, the first one. Maybe we need to do an Australia one. But would you guys be interested in that? I would love to hear. And then Jules is asking, have you, and Jules is coming to our weekend as well. Have you ever heard of the bell robe method?
no, I'm gonna look that one up. Boy, that's a new one for me. I
I know.
love new ones.
It's
Bellow.
so exciting.
Mella's writing it down because she's excited.
A
I
class.
thought I heard of almost everything, so that's a new one for me.
Yeah, I've not heard of that one before either. Amaris says, I have a Japanese kimono book in the Lolita books. Working getting my hands on some Victorian books. Do you have how can I get some hands on some Victorian books?
You know what? There's a whole Frances Gimbel, and here's one of them. Fashions of the Gilded Age. Okay, so Frances Gimbel, and you can get these on Amazon. She has they're huge. She has
Wow.
like 5 books out, and what she's done is she is reprinting actual pattern drafts from the time period. So let me show you what the inside looks like.
Yeah.
So um, so they're ooh, can you see? So
Yeah.
but there's notes on, there's a way to that's a whole other class because these books are all used with tapes, and you make up the tapes. um so you have a different tape for every single size, every single bust size, and every single waist size, and you tape the tapes together and use the tapes,
As like
and
as your measuring device.
as your measuring device, absolutely. And but Frances Gimbel has done a fabulous job of getting these copied and put into books and categorized by 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, that
Wow.
type of thing.
That's
So
very
as far as I know, there are 5 or 6 of them out. I don't remember if it's 5 or 6, and they're huge. They're really huge.
yeah.
And so you can find them on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah, Amaris says she's writing it down right now.
Good.
Nicole says the one that we hadn't heard of, which I have to go back up, the
1901. Okay, great.
Bell 1901 on drafting pattern. Yeah,
Okay.
super
That's
cool.
great. I
Super
have a
cool.
lot of what I used to bring into class is I have an incredible amount of tailoring books. And I pulled a couple of them, like the director system, but they're old. I mean, they're original. They're not copies.
I have
And they'll
the
have pictures in them, like
oh,
this, and
oh,
then they'll have as my glasses fall off, they'll have a draft like this
oh,
with instructions. And this is kind of like the thing we did with you
yeah,
guys, where it's a step by step where you
yeah,
plug in the measurements
yeah.
and it will take you to the shape.
And
Okay.
I have like the standard American drafting system or something.
That is a fabulous
Yeah,
book.
that one's good too. I have one on more uniforms as well. Natalie
Mhm.
said the author's name again of the Victorian books, I think.
Francis Gimble is the person who has put together the reprints, if that makes sense. Gimble.
Yeah.
And I know that they have them on Amazon, so you can check them out there.
And then Sandra's saying, have we discussed a class for cosplay patterns?
That
Yes,
would be good.
interest for cosplay.
And
For
yeah, well, that would be it, because many of the cosplay patterns are actually based on loosely based on historical,
Mhm.
patterns,
Yeah,
but not for wearing historical undergarments. So there
right.
would be different fit, but basically your basic sloper could be adapted to almost any costume
For
because you're
sure.
going to be wearing a modern undergarment usually in
Yeah,
cosplay
yeah, yeah.
for a lot of them. I mean, some of them you may not, but
So I think some people do corset. I mean, it depends. It depends on
yeah.
right.
Mhm.
And Gail is here from Seattle. She's looking forward to meeting Mela. And Gail, I met two Gails in Houston. I think that we met Gail. Did I get to meet you? And Sue is saying, just curious if there are any patterns for vintage women's workwear, specifically the coveralls or jumpsuit.
Yes, there are. There are. And I know that I have a whole book like this older book I showed you from 1900, or it's that is basically all just coveralls and jumpsuits. It's actually designed more for men, but I bet you it could be adapted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Oh,
you know what? Coveralls, there's a pattern out. Wearing History has a great pattern for it. So you
okay.
might want to look at online. It's called Wearing History. She has a really nice assortment of historical patterns that are all based on actual garments or actual patterns of the time. And she has a coveralls, and she does a lot of stuff for World War II.
And I know that Folkwear Patterns has. I know that they have a Rosie the Riveter,
Yeah,
like
they do have a Rosie the Riveter. Yes.
because I have it. I made it.
Yeah,
And
that's right. I forgot about that one.
yeah, so I just thought of that when I heard the question. Do you have a link or book for what, Sue? What are you asking
So
about?
Sue, let us know what to exactly.
Yeah. And Gail, yes, I thought I got to meet you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again as well. Jules said Trisha and I have the same pattern for the 1940s. Yeah, when I left school, you gave me because I always liked like the 40s and the 60s, and that was more my era that I liked. Um, and you gave me like a women's home journal and like another magazine, and there was a one with like drafts in it, and I actually made the coat that I made off of one of those drafts. It was not easy to take from that magazine. Like it would have not been easy to. I mean, I did a lot of adjusting in the mock-up, but that was a lot of fun. And I think yeah, Jules loves the 1940s. She dresses vintage all the time. So that's what she likes is the 40s and 50s, 30s and things. And she's trying to use those old patterns that don't have any marks on them and you know the tissue patterns that used to come in the magazines for free and stuff like that.
I
Um,
just made a note for Sue, and she says Mel was talking about having a book that might show coveralls. I
yeah,
just made a note to look up in my library, which is in a whole other room, where that coverall book is, and I can link that to you,
yeah,
Tricia, so that you can
yeah.
put it out
I'll,
there. Okay, but it isn't. It's a turn of the century, last century book, so it's not going to be readily available. Um, but there, you might find it. I mean, you
yeah.
never know.
She did look up the wearing history.
Wearing history and folklore patterns, yeah. Oh, folklore patterns could be a great vendor for PatternCon, absolutely, but so could wearing history too.
Yeah.
And
And definitely, I mean, a lot of you guys have expressed to me when we did those other lives about PatternCon that you would want to have vendors. I think books would be a great thing to have, like a vendor for books and things like that. Um, because people always love books. And Amara says I wish I could go to PatternCon, but it's okay that you guys give resources to read, and I'm truly grateful for this. Yes, absolutely. We're all about sharing the love, however we can.
oh, however we can do that. There's also, you know what, another good pattern company. Oh, I'm blanking on it. So Chic,
So,
CHIC. So Chic, and she's in Portland, Oregon, and her stuff is pretty late 40s, 50s. And I don't know if she has a coverall pattern, but she's got some great patterns, and they are been graded for the modern body, and they are inclusive in their size range, and her instructions are very good.
so I'm going to shift gears a little bit just because this is something that I'm curious about. So when I was in school, we did I don't it was it a full class or I don't remember, but I made a corset, but
Hmm.
it wasn't like the Laughing Moon, like the ones that we can find in your corset class that you taught. But and there's a lot of interest in making corsets, so that's why I kind of wanted to bring it up. And also shifting into this other thing, I used a pattern that you got off of a Smithsonian corset with like where the boning channels crossed seams and stuff,
Hmm.
like where you use spiral. And I always loved that. I still have it. I haven't worn it in a while, but I still have it. And even did like the hand done eyelets in the back for the grommets. Um, but I, you worked for a time at the Smithsonian, right? And
Well,
what?
I worked on it. It was called the. It was actually the Natural History Museum of of the Smithsonian, and it was the Kopp Family Textiles Natural History Group. I know there was a title for it. It was so long ago, but we were dealing with a group of textiles from the Kopp family, COPP. They people had done stuff on their quilts, but not realizing that they had their clothes too, and we were doing that, and we were supposed to do more with it. That We worked on it for like 3 years, this group of six of us, and then the funding fell out, and things changed, and who knows where that research and all that stuff went. I know I have all my copies of it,
Yeah,
but so who knows where all that stuff went. And it was pretty much, their stuff was more late 18th century, early 19th
I was
century.
it was like 1890s was the course.
No, no, it was earlier,
Early.
1790s, 1790s through
Oh, okay.
1830s. Yeah, it was
Okay.
very early that I was working on.
And
So,
Sumalee's here. She says regarding corsets, Altier
Sim and Clockwork, yeah, they have some great patterns. They do. They both do.
yeah, Sumalee is very into historical. She's she's been studying historical costume and wear for a long time, and she's a student of mine as well. So
Mhm.
she's probably into into all of this. So what kind, like we could do a Haslam class. We could do. Well, I know you've done that corset in. That's still, how long is that class? That
Well, I don't, the pattern that you have, I don't teach that pattern because
no, no,
it
no,
is.
not the Smithsonian one. I know because
No,
we.
I don't. It's just too the scaling of it is too hard for a group. When you're one on one, it's fine, but it's not
Yeah,
good with a group.
yeah, it's a
Um,
common pattern, but I love it.
yeah, but you know what? A good corset class takes a good 2 to 3 days. It really does, and it depends on the size. I just did one last year in California, and it was one night I fit everybody, and then we had 2 days. And but by the time we got halfway through the second day, everyone was so exhausted.
Yeah.
that they were making poor choices, that they messed up on things. They were just it was just too much of an overload. It's almost like you needed a break in between. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
it was just too intense, and it wasn't a big group. It was like 10, 12 people, but it was just too much in that amount of days.
Yeah.
And it was also, I learned that what everyone wanted was a double layer corset, and I kept on saying, with double layer corset, I said, if we make a single layer corset with bone casing,
Yeah.
it will be easier to fit for the first time and easier. And they all fought me on it, and so we did it the way they wanted because they were paying for it. And
Yeah.
then we got to the end, they all said, everyone said the same thing. I wish we had done a single layer corset with bone casing for the first for this. I wish we would have, because it would have been easier to fit and easier for changes. And I said,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
but you do what everybody asks for.
Sumali, you don't have any corsets. She has a few sets of stays. Well, and she's taken her pattern making skills and learned how to create support with her fabric and her darts instead of
There
having
we go.
for a corset workshop. I think fitting pattern making is really what most people need the most help with. Um, like the fitting of a corset and the pattern making. Yeah. The thing with a corset is you have so many panels. So if you if you grow it each piece by an eighth of an inch, you're adding a lot to that corset. And that's the thing with corsets is you have to be really careful that you're not increasing or decreasing your size and when you're transferring things off and whatnot.
That old fashioned or couture way of tracing your seam lines and pinning on your seam lines and not worrying about how big your seam allowance is because you have your seam line
Yeah.
and that you are pinning on the seam line,
Yeah.
as opposed to worrying about the seam allowance, being even at the edge, because their seam
Yeah.
lines may not be matching up at
Yeah.
that point, because maybe you cut one a 16th of an inch different. But if
Yeah.
you but you really mark your seams
Yeah.
and fit from there, you'll it takes more time, you think, but in the long run it's better for your corset. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. You're right,
You
Natalie.
spoke it.
Need a separate retreat for corsets. It's just something that people always ask me about, and it's so hard. And even in our virtual membership, I've been thinking about how do we do a corset class. It's not a hour class. It's not a 2 hour class. It's like a
Not even a 2-day class, realistically. It's
and
not,
it,
especially if you have a huge difference bust to waist ratio. And many, many people want to sign up for a class like that who, I know this sounds inappropriate, but there's no way to say it, do not fit in your standard size 4 to 12 or 14 range. And,
yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't fit into it all the time. But it takes more time. It takes time to get it right, and you want to get it right for the student. Does that make sense?
yeah,
And the body squishes and molds differently. And the more body you have, the more it squishes. And some people squish, and some people don't squish, and some people squish in different areas. And it takes time. It takes time to get it right for a
yeah.
person.
Yeah, Sumili's right. Maybe a lecture rather than a workshop for just
Mhm.
conceptual, like to talk about things like that. That's a good idea too, Sumili. Thanks.
Yeah, and also basing is so underrated. I agree. It's so important. Basing is so
Yeah.
important. It really
It,
is. And basing is faster than pins have the time to get it right.
yes, that's
And
true.
you line up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I thought there was something else that great sorry. Jules is saying, do you know Rebecca Russell from Bespoke Vintage?
I just wrote that one down to check because no, I don't.
Older eras. Yeah, that's awesome. Especially detailed and tight. It needs to be. Yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I would just love to listen to Mela yap about specialty tactics, maybe a Q&A panel. I know it's true. I'm telling you, this woman, she's just full of information.
That's because I'm old. Come on, let's be real here.
Yeah, but you've been into this for a long time, so you have a lot of like
40 years, over 40 years. Well, yeah, way over 40 years. Yeah. Almost 50 years.
and
Yeah.
haven't even talked about what you mainly do now is millinery, which she's done a whole like for a long time. So I know that some of you guys have expressed, learning millinery stuff as well. And there's been this whole like this whole thing about, buckram disappearing, and that's been a whole thing. Is there do you think that there's any class that can be done in millinery, like a short class? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it
Um,
depends upon, I mean, there's so many classes in millinery. There really
right,
can. And I've been, I mean, I just got back from Tennessee teaching
right.
5 days at Millinery Meetup.
Yeah,
I'm teaching 5 different classes, and then just before that, teaching at custom college classes too. And so there's lots to do in millinery. And you really have to figure out where you want to go with it,
yeah.
because it's like clothing. It's like saying, you can learn to sew, but are you doing modern clothes? Are you doing historical clothes? Are you doing evening wear? I mean, there's
Yeah,
yeah.
well, that's why that's what I wanna entertain with PatternCon, is, like, going into I mean, pattern making is a skill that can be used not only for clothing, I mean, if we
Mhm.
that far, but, and like I said, would there be anything, because there's lots of different ways to shape hats, there's the forming on, like, what do you call it, on the
The
block.
millinery blocks. So there's blocking, there's flat patterning.
Yeah,
There's cut and sew. And then there's, are we using buckram? Are we using cinnamon? Are we using
right,
parasol straw? Are you doing straw braid? Are you using a straw braid machine? Are you using your sewing machine? And when I had my shop in California, we taught all those type of classes.
yeah.
I thought with my shop in Oregon, we would do the same thing. Let me tell you, they didn't tell me that there's only one circuit per room. And so there's
Hour.
lots of electrical outlets, but only one circuit. And steamers are like church coffee pots.
Yeah,
You put two in and you blow the circuits.
yeah,
So I can't, there's not a room in the building I can teach him because of that. In all the buildings, there's like, we're on acreage with buildings and buildings. It's an old mill.
yeah.
And they all have one, they set it up purposely with one circuit per room because they thought that's all they need.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I experienced that when I moved in here. I had to I hired an electrician because I have 7 industrial machines in my shop.
Yeah.
And I knew everywhere I've ever had a shop, I've blown breakers, because even your iron is the same thing. Your iron pulls a lot as well.
Oh, those, I have the industrial irons. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I unplug my industrial iron when I put in my big industrial steamer. What
yeah,
kind of business does that?
yeah. Well, we have to be mindful of, like, I can only have 3 machines max, but really 2 machines on 1 breaker. So I had to add I think we added 3 breakers into my sewing room
Well,
downstairs.
we at the old shop, I had 12 circuits, 12 breakers.
Yeah.
12. I have one where I'm at
Yeah,
now. One.
hard. That's hard to do it. Well, and even at Quilt Fest, when I went to Quilt Fest last week, 2 weeks ago,
Mm.
that power is a big thing for them too. So they would have, like, shared iron stations. And they liked that I did pattern making and fitting, because you don't need machines for that.
Mhm.
And so that made it a little easier for them, because they do have classes with sewing machines, but power is always a thing. It's
So
always a thing.
that's the problem with classes too, is getting sewing machines if you
Yeah,
need sewing machines, and getting the power, and or people having to bring a machine. And the same with millinery, when you need blocks and stuff like that, it's having enough blocks and the right blocks for people. And most people, even millinery, I have 400 and some blocks, but that doesn't mean I have enough for a class of 12 to have the same block.
have the
Does that
same.
make sense?
Yeah. Hmm.
So,
Well, would it be what kind of flat pattern hats or millinery is there?
oh, there's lots of flat pattern hats, but also depends upon, do people want a modern hat? Do they want a historical hat? And if they want a historical hat, what time period? You know?
Yeah. Okay, people. Any
Yeah,
of it?
so we need to know. But now somebody put down, Sue put, she
This?
wants a pre-sewing class era. Now I'm not too sure what that means because the sewing's been all the way back. So I'm not too sure what that means.
Yeah. Well, explain that to us, Sue, a little
Please
bit.
explain that because I didn't understand and I want to be able to answer you.
Let's say a lot of people ask me to teach sewing locally, but it's always these same logistical questions. Yeah, it's really tricky. It's really tricky when you get into the power situation. No, that is what your electricity was pre-sewing era. Your building is what she's
Oh
saying.
yeah, yeah. No, it was because it was a 19, yeah, the where I'm at is a turn of this last century's mill. Yeah, and it was, and they're actually the mill where technically Pendleton started. The daughter, I'll tell you really fast. The daughter of the owner thought she would inherit the whale mill because she was kind of the person who could read and write and did all the billing for the
Uh,
mill, for the Thomas K. Woolen mill. And when her father died, it went to the son. And she was not happy. And she and her husband moved to a little town called Pendleton in Oregon, and they bought a defunct mill. And she trained her boys in the mill work, which she knew from running the Thomas K. Woolen mill, but she also knew to go forward with technology at that time. And they went from water to electricity and things like that. And that's why Pendleton is still in business. And
yeah.
our mill fell apart, in the 60s and 70s because they didn't go
Dated.
with modern technology.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotta keep up with the times. As
yeah,
scary
exactly.
quickly as
Hmm.
I mean, it's essential to stay relevant.
Hmm. So,
um,
so someone says, Sandra says, I want to be able to make cloche hats. Well, cloche hats, originally, do you know that cloche hats were made so that you could travel with it? They weren't blocked, but the industry nabbed onto them and started blocking. And oh, that's actually what I'm going to back to Britain in January, back to Hatworks in Stockport to do some research for original Christie's in the turn of the last century, well, 1920s really, about cloche hats, about some of the early forms of cloche hats, because what we think of a cloche and what they called a cloche are different.
huh,
And yeah, I know, but we put cloche on a 20s hat. If it's a 20s
right.
hat, it's a cloche.
But close, like where it comes down.
Yeah, but cloche meant originally the original cloche was, it was soft on the inside. It wasn't blocked, and you could
Yeah,
travel with it, and you could put it in your pocket. And now we think of the wool or fur felt that's
yeah,
blocked on a hat block in
yeah.
that shape is a cloche, and that is called a cloche now too. But it wasn't then. There's all these other names for them. And that's what the whole thing with the cloche was. It was this new young travel hat is what it was. And so I'm actually going back on that. So it's like, do you want an original cloche or do you want what we call a cloche now? Do you want a block cloche? Do you want something made on a sewing machine? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, see, you don't want this type of knowledge. You just want a cloche. I understand.
I love cloches as well. They're my favorite. And if you guys have seen, I know a few of you here have that beautiful blue cloche, the straw one
Mhm.
that I have with the green and the feathers. That's Mela made that hat. I bought that from her.
Yeah, cloche does mean bell in French. It does, but and that's what it was called because it was bell shaped. Because
Yeah.
it was like, it's like, also cloche is also, it's a bell, but it's also when you buy a glass, it's that goes over something. It's called a cloche. I mean, that glass shape is called a
Oh,
cloche. Yeah,
like
I'm talking about where you've got a wooden base and then you've got the glass over it and there's a something inside.
yeah, yeah,
That's called a cloche also.
like Beauty
Hmm.
and the Rose.
Hmm. Yeah.
um, do
Oh,
you ever?
Richard the Thread. That's some really good friends of ours, and we're trying to get them to do a sponsorship for PatternCon. Yeah,
Yes,
with
yes.
that's Lois at Richard the Thread.
Yep, yep.
Hmm.
We're trying to get them involved as well
Hmm.
as Mulberry Silks. We're working on that behind the scenes, trying
Yep.
to put all these things together. But I love hearing from you guys where you said you'd love like a panel discussion about corsets and historical stuff. I think that would be really interesting for a lot of people. Like some of this
Mm.
knowledge that you just have about these things. You could do a couple lectures, or one, and on various things. I think that would be really cool. Another couple of things that we talked about when I was doing my solo episodes were like, is there like a challenge that we can do, like a draping challenge or a draft challenge or something like that that would be kind of fun to, or like so, something like that, like where, and then also that there's a lot of people who would be interested in like networking and kind of like getting to know other people, and connecting with other people in that way. So I'm trying to like think of how we can incorporate some of the. But I know when I was at at LA,
Fullerton. Oh, I see.
when I was learning from Helen Joseph Armstrong. One of the class that I took with her was one of my favorite classes that I ever took. And I thought of this as kind of maybe it could be like a challenge, like an hour-long challenge or something, like half scale or something. But we would come in and she would have a design either drawn or she would have a finished garment on a half scale, and we would have to figure out the pattern. And that was our homework. And it
Mhm.
really it taught me to kind of figure out how to analyze what you're looking at and kind of work backwards. And then we have to make a mock-up of it. So you'd think you got it right, and then you get into the mock-up and you're like, oh no, this isn't right. Like but I love that because scratched my brain in a cool way.
Mhm.
But if you have any thoughts on that, I think that that would be fun to incorporate way. I don't know. I've been kind of like mulling it over. And then of course there's other class ideas that people are thinking of too. Sumali says, I think a panel about the history of undergarments and how they affect pattern fit would be very interesting. That would be very interesting. Like what you're saying about drafts, like with the corsets. Another thing that you mentioned before, Mela, when we've had conversations, is about taking like historical elements and introducing them into modern silhouettes. Like, what kind of ideas do you have on that?
Well, I think that that's sort of the whole cottage core too.
Yeah,
It's kind of like it's a cross between Victorian and you're gonna laugh at me, but Lord of the Rings or you know
well, is it
oh,
like punk too? Like steampunk is kind of
steampunk, same thing.
yeah,
Steampunk is the same thing. Yeah. Uh-huh. And so I think that a lot of people are I think a lot of people are looking for different clothes because what's out there is all spandex and knits and one size fits 12 and it doesn't look good on anybody and
yeah,
they're looking for something and
yeah,
I think that that's what the whole cottage core is and the cottage core reminds me of what I used to wear in the 70s, early 70s. I would wear it was kind of like Little House on the Prairie
yeah,
and with or Banana Republic used to be and is not now when it was all stuff that was sort of like out of Africa movie. And so I think that there's a hunger for wanting to look different, but
yeah.
and
Unique. I think unique.
unique. Yeah.
Just we have so much of the same silhouettes. It seems
Hmm.
to just introduce something a little. I love vintage patterns because they weren't your basic bodice with the darts moved. Like you have the grown on sleeves, or you'd have like an inset. You know,
Hmm.
that's where your darting went. Instead of incorporating a lot of these basic shapes where you just like add a collar and like add these basic elements. But they got really creative with them. But like I know there's a 40s pattern that I have that I absolutely love that is like that. And like the back skirt like overlaps and is asymmetrical and the pockets like go into a yoke that goes, just
Hmm.
interesting lines instead of having side seams, shoulder, but it takes a little bit more thought with that.
Well, the reason we don't see those clothes is because they're too expensive to manufacture.
Right.
So
Right.
an interesting story is, and this is ages ago, but I think it's same today. When the movie Evita came out with Madonna in it,
Mhm.
there was a huge thing where, and I believe it was Saks Fifth Avenue, but a couple companies made duplicate some of this clothes or used the 40 styles and made these fabulous clothes to sell, thinking, okay, everyone's going to want these clothes from the movie. Well, the problem is they were too expensive to manufacture,
Yeah.
and when they did do it, you needed also the whole look from head to toe.
Right.
Because the outfit itself, by itself, without
Yeah.
having your hair done and the makeup and the right shoes, just looked like it just looked wrong. And
Yeah.
they all went on the sale rack. I remember this. I remember seeing those clothes at Saks Fifth Avenue, going, "Oh my God, these are so incredible!" And then you put them on, and unless you had the right, you had to have the whole look from head to toe, and and the red lipstick, and which was not in then, and that, and but also it was just too expensive to manufacture those clothes. And they wrote articles about it, saying that they were having trouble with the production line because they couldn't get everyone to do the little curved pocket
Yeah.
right and things like that because we've gotten used to this straight sewing
Yeah. Yeah. That is
and it was the price.
That is interesting, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, I had this guy who came to me, and he was a bartender in Vegas, and big bank in Vegas, and so he wanted to start a bartending pants line because
Mhm.
all these tools on them, and he's like, I know tons of people who would get these, but he wanted to do it. It was like 8 welt pockets, one pair of pants. I was like, be a manufacturing nightmare. I was like, have you
Mhm.
looked into this? I'm like, I'll pattern it for you, but it's going to be really expensive, you know.
Mm.
And I did it, and I don't know what happened with his line. We kind of That was right before I moved, but yeah, you have to think about those things when you're going into manufacturing, and especially like you said, the curved pockets and things like that. Like you have factory work, that's all they do is the same pocket, and so you threw some in there that's different. It's going to be hard. It's going to take a minute to adjust, and that's what I think people don't realize when you're sewing for yourself. In a factory, you have one person that does all the pockets, you have one person that does all the collars. So they are really, really good and
Mhm.
at knocking those out and getting them perfect. You are your own factory.
Mhm.
Like for everything to be perfect and exactly lined up, that is really hard. And that's why, it doesn't happen so much when you're doing it yourself. Sometimes it takes more practice, it takes more than it, like you were saying. It takes a village, it takes more than one person to make a perfect garment. So embrace those imperfections and know that it's
Well,
not.
also, I want to get back. I'm going to say for really fast because W
Yeah,
Designs by Diane said you need the correct foundation garments. That was the major problem too, is people didn't have the right foundation garments,
true,
so the clothes looked funny. Also, but
true.
on what you're going with, Trisha, I don't know. I'm sure everyone's seen on Instagram or whatever those little videos of those factories in China where they have the template and the
Yeah,
machine puts the pocket on and the machine does it. Well, I went to a trade show in Vegas a couple years ago and we saw those machines, and my husband and I, our mouths were on the floor. I mean, it took him 22 minutes to make a blazer.
yeah,
And I mean, this person started at the beginning and this machine did it.
yeah.
And we can't do that.
No,
I don't
no,
want to do that, but
right.
we can't do that. Do you follow? I mean, we
Yeah,
just can't do that. And I don't have a machine that does all that. And there's machines that put all the beads and the sequins on, and
yep,
they can do a whole design and put the pearls on and then the stones on and then the sequins on and then the pearls on. And it's like going, here we are with
yeah.
everything
We
we
can't
put.
do it. It's
Yeah,
true. But I mean, that is the great thing. If you're sewing for yourself and you want
you
to
can
take
do all that.
kinds of things, then you can do it. But be easy with yourself when comparing it to things that you get, because yeah, they have, especially for making jeans. They have this flat felt. They have this special machine that only does buttonholes. That's why it's perfect every time. There's the rivet machine, and we are doing all of that in our one sewing room. So there's
But we can, and that's what's cool about it. Just
that's
takes a
right.
little bit more time.
That's right. And handmade. And that's why handmade should be and is more expensive.
Hmm.
Sumily, I'm glad you like my the reverse engineering challenge. I think it would be fun. I think of that, and what came to mind when that was brought up to me when I did the live the last time is my grandfather was an artist. He was a famous artist, and he would do these art shows all over the country. And I went to quite a few of them. He was known. He would do these quick draw challenges. So it would be like he would do a lot of these Western. He ended up living in Arizona, but he also did these like Western art shows. So it would be like a cowboy, like a really cool looking cowboy dude just sitting there like with a pipe or something, or just sitting there. And you'd have like 10 people with easels around him, and it would be a quick draw challenge. So it would be like 5 minutes, and whatever you could produce in 5 minutes, and then they would be displayed afterwards, or declare a winner of like whatever people like. And my grandfather was really good at that, and he could do like a person's face with like all these intricate details in like a minute. And so I'm like, how can we get that kind of a thing, which I think would be great for people to watch, also for people to participate in a patterning aspect. So that's what I was thinking of, like some kind of a challenge, like a design or something, and we work in half scale and like create something like that would be really fun. No power needed. I guess you would if you were making a mock-up of it, but but maybe just the pattern and like tape it together. I don't know, something like that I think would be fun in a pattern. Like I'm just trying to think of like how we can have fun with patterning. And I have a lot of students when they start learning about different dart manipulation and then I love it when people take my examples that I've given them and then they start experimenting and playing with like how else they can use this, how in different ways can they try different things. And I really think that's the fun of pattern making. You learn a few things and then it opens doors, it opens up inspiration. Like, how else can we do this? So I'm trying to figure out like I did, Charlotta and I did a zero waste challenge. It was a virtual challenge. It about how like we were given a set dimension of fabric. I did it in half scale and it was a zero waste. So and it was called hidden letters. So you had to pick a letter of your name, either the first or the last name of your letter, and make a garment out of that letter with this set measurement. Um, and the pattern and trying to keep it as zero waste as possible. So I did a letter T and I made like a little kimono kind of style shirt, and I want to make it in full scale because I really like it. But just those kinds of things, I think for pattern nerd people, I mean, I think that that's a great way to exercise. Like, how can I use this skill in a different way? And it helps you to kind of expand how you can use it in other adaptations. What do you guys think? Am I the only one? And Sumali says a panel or lecture on fast fashion, maybe, and how pattern making has changed in the industry to accommodate it. That's an interesting topic, yeah, as well. Um, so very cool, yeah. But well, I think they like you, Mela. I think they like stuff, which is good.
Yeah.
And Sandra did respond about the cloche hat because you were like, we could go in all these different directions. She says it's definitely the shape that I'm interested in when
Mhm.
it comes to the cloche hat. That seems to be the best shape and style hat for me. I'll have to learn the rest of the different aspects. And Sandra's relatively new to garment sewing. Actually, she's joined part of my membership, and you'll get to meet her at the weekend.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
There's also, Mrs. Dupree has some patterns that are duplicates from the 20s on cut and sew cloche hats. So you might want to look up under millinery or hats under Mrs. Dupree on online. And there are some great patterns out. And even on Etsy, look up cloche hat patterns. And there's a couple that are more for the sewing machine and that are absolutely, right off of actual patterns from the
yeah,
20s. And so you probably can find some stuff there so you don't have to have a hat block and for felt and all
all
that
the
type of stuff to block it. Yeah.
yeah,
And blocking is a whole different ball game and
yeah.
the materials for blocking these days have escalated in price, you guys. They've
Mhm.
just escalated. It's just really ridiculous.
I was always when I was in school, I always wanted there was one class where we got to like pick a subject, and I think that's when we did corsets. But I and you would ask us like what we want to learn, and I always wanted mine was always millinery, and I always got voted out. Nobody else wanted to do millinery. And I'm like, I want to do more of this.
Well, then we used to do all the stuff in the summer, I mean in January and in the summer too for
Yeah,
millinery. We used to do a lot of stuff then.
yeah. Well, I came and helped you for costume college one time, and then we got to block. I think we got to block some straw, and
Hmm. But
the
see, you
block.
need blocks. I mean, it's just a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of equipment that you need to do.
It is a lot of equipment.
But yeah, and also I'm curious, I know Mela doesn't did you ever get that program, that computer system working in this at school? Because you had that and I think we were supposed to play with it, but we never had time to.
Yeah, we
And
did. We got it going. Yeah, and
oh,
that was Ginger software.
Ginger, that's right. It was
Ginger
Ginger.
software. Yeah. So yeah, they're still using it. We got a big plotter for it later, and we could plot out the patterns, and we got the students working on the Ginger software, and that was pretty cool.
Because I know the reason I thought I just spoke with Ellie. I forget her last name right now, but she teaches a Clo 3D. Clo 3D is kind of the hot one on the market right now, I think, for a lot of people. And so I'm going to have a class brought to the Pattern Place next year on Clo 3D, and I'm thinking that we have to have some kind of digital patterning
And
So
that's the way it's going. I mean, the whole industry's gone digital. And if you don't know the digital, you can't get a job at at a company anymore because they've all gone digital. But the
yeah,
bad thing about it is they're all then working off of a basic company slope or whatever, and they don't know how to make that from scratch. Does that make sense? And so
right.
they don't know how to really make substantial changes, and that's why all our clothes look alike. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Because it's all based off the same
Uh,
basic blocks, and and there needs to be some, and they don't know how to change those blocks in such a dramatic way to make a different shape.
yeah, yeah. And I think, my thought on I've gotten to play with, and it was interesting talking with Ellie. She knew this program. Not everybody does. It's not widely known, but StyleCAD was the program that I had access to for a while and was using and learning. And it's so cool. I love being able to like equally spaced buttons, just boom, into
Hmm.
like add seam allowance, like boom. I mean, that stuff is so cool. Um, but it was hard for me because I didn't use it frequently enough. Like I knew because I've done it by hand what I wanted to happen. I just couldn't find the button to make it.
I get, absolutely, I understand. Yeah,
Yeah. So I
and
think
that's hard.
you have to use. So I'm not super skilled in it, and for costumes, it's so many one-offs. I'm not doing mass production. So it didn't really help me a lot. But I think even if you end up going into computer drafting, to me, in my opinion, is that you have to kind of know how to do it by hand first because you can't fit on a computer,
Mhm.
and that's where I think a lot is lost as well. But once you know that and you know how it happens in the physical world,
Mhm. Then the computer
then
can open up your world
translate it to the,
immensely.
and it's like used as a tool. I know a lot of people want to jump straight into computer drafting, but I think that there has to be some understanding of how it works by hand, and also especially for fitting, especially for making fitting adjustments.
Oh, it's just like the art world. There's all the computerized art you can do. And I'm not talking about AI, but I'm talking about doing it on the computer. But
Yeah,
they train you at the school that first you need to do some hand drawing.
yeah,
You need to have that hand drawing first, and then, then go to the computer. Doesn't mean you need to be excel at hand drawing, but you
yeah,
need to have some basics in hand drawing first.
yeah,
And digital's good for, like somebody says, for mass production, and it's true. Yeah.
absolutely.
And but
And
manual, I mean,
like
we do one of a kind.
grading by hand is so tedious and time consuming.
Oh.
Like it definitely should be done by computer always. But I love when I'm doing costumes where it's not a standard grade anyway. So it's like,
Mhm.
but I think you could still do it. That was one thing I was really wanting to get good at the computer software, was so I could bang out some grading, but I never really got that familiar with it because there's always, so much going on.
No,
But
and I would just rather just fit it on a body and do a muslin on a body and go from there.
right. Yeah, exactly. And those of you guys who know the method that I teach, where we do a fitting and we mark it up, and then
Mhm.
we cut it up. I just realized my phone's dying and I plugged it in and it's still telling me that it's not. Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, mine's not plugged in, so I'm probably gonna die pretty soon.
Yeah, well, we're almost done, but
Yeah.
that's the technique I learned from Mela, and
Yeah, I
doing it.
know. Sorry I taught you that.
No, I love it. I think it makes so much sense, and people find it a lot easier to transfer information back to your pattern, so much
Yeah.
easier. April says, "So sad because you can add your measurements on Clo 3D." Why is it sad? But that's good, right? Flat pattern hat sounds interesting. The flat patterning of hat sounds interesting and more doable.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is, it is. So take a look at
yeah,
Miss, it's just easy to find them on Etsy and Mrs. Dupree. Mhm.
yeah. And Tam Snazzy Stuff says it. Yes, it's very obvious that companies are using the same block for
They
sure.
are. It's all the same stuff, and it's a square.
And W Designs by Dan said, my husband said the same thing about steel industry when he learned AutoCAD. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had to learn AutoCAD for scenic design because I was teaching that at the college too for a while. And yeah, and if you hadn't built before, because we were dealing with wood, you didn't understand the AutoCAD. I
r-
felt.
Right. Right. it's having that basic understanding.
Hmm.
So many of the drafting people have never learned to build a thing in their lives.
So true.
Yeah, it's true. And then, but I feel the same way about draping too. I feel like you have to have a basic understanding of pattern making, like
Hmm.
before you can go into draping, because what do you do once you got it on the form looking how you want it? You still need to be able to take it off and turn it into a pattern.
Right. Uh-huh. Without it going up like this. It's got to be
Yeah.
flat.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I always tell my students, remember, I always used to say to them, you know what? You're not built like SpongeBob.
Right.
So the back's going to be different than the front, and it's not going to be flat.
Yeah, we had a lot of Mela-isms. Do you still have that? I don't
I
know.
still have my sign that you made.
Yeah, the sign that we made. There was, and I think I posted that. This is when I tell people all the time, if they're that close, kick
Yeah, just kick them. Just kick
them.
them.
Well, on that, I think that we should wrap up because it's been an hour. But this was such a blast. Thank you, Mela, for
Oh,
joining.
absolutely.
You guys are going to hear more from Mela. That's why I wanted her to kick off this series, and we'll bring other people too. So I'm going to try to do it once a month, maybe the second Wednesday. We'll see. So stay tuned for that, and we're going to be talking more about what we might want to see at PatternCon, meeting with other pattern teachers, pattern nerds, and see if we can, get some excitement going on. Our goal is to spread the love of this, see what you guys are interested in, give you more of that. Let's talk about it. Let's have all that. And Natalie says she could listen to us all day. I mean, we could just talk about this all day. That's how we know you're in the right spot. So thank you guys so much for joining us in this conversation. And some of you, we can't wait to meet you in person at the retreat. And definitely look out for PatternCon information as we are figuring it out on the back end for you. But we will be continuing these conversations so that we make sure that it's something that you guys are jazzed and excited about.
So
All right.
let us know. Let us know what you
Yeah,
want. When you
yeah.
think in the middle of the night, jot it down and send it to Trish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is, like you said, this is about our community, our pattern community. And like, we all have different things that we know, and we can find the things that we don't know, and people, and I think all of us are really excited to just share all of this and learn from each other. And that's what PatternCon, for me, that's what the dream is that we all come together and we're like, this is so cool. This is so awesome. Tell me about that thing. I want to learn this. Let's do a little, have fun and play with that. So yeah,
Mhm.
any information or any thoughts that come up to you, I've been getting lots of wonderful feedback. I've been taking it all in. I've got notes. We've got, things that we're keeping track of it all, but yeah, we're super excited about it. Thank you guys. Siam and ethnic patterns, please. Asian, yeah, April, yes, definitely, yes. I know that you like all that stuff too. So thank you so much. We're gonna run for today, but hopefully join us again next time. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Bye bye for
Thank
now.
you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.